Imagine watching a video, and everybody on screen's calm and well-spoken. They're even smiling. But here's the thing. They're explaining why they're about to commit suicide.
Oh, wow.
That's the reality of Heaven's Gate's final days, captured on VHS tapes right before their mass suicide back in 1997. It's one of the most bizarre and unsettling events in modern history. 39 members took their lives, and that's what we're diving into today, the strange world of Heaven's Gate. Welcome back to Call Report. Before we get started, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on those notifications so you don't miss any of our deep dives. Today, we're exploring a group that captivated the world with its eerie blend of science fiction, new age spirituality, and a chillingly calculated final act, Heaven's Gate.
It's a story that forces you to confront the power of belief, the allure of belonging, and the dark side of charisma.
Trust me, this one's got it all. Castration, a spaceship trailing a comet, a web design business run by folks who believe they're about to shed their earthly vehicles. It's a story that's both fascinating and incredibly disturbing. A true testament to the complexities of human psychology and the dangers of unchecked groupthink.
What makes Heaven's Gate so captivating is how they managed to blend seemingly disparate elements, cutting-edge technology, a rigid, almost corporate-like structure, and a belief system that wouldn't be out of place in a science fiction novel.
Today we're taking a deep dive into understanding not just what happened, but the why behind it all.
Right. This isn't just about the shocking ending. It's about the journey, the evolution of their beliefs, and the two figures at the heart of it all. Marshall Applewhite, a former music teacher, and Bonnie Nettles, a nurse.
Like, did you know their journey started in a psychiatric hospital?
Wait, a psychiatric hospital?
Yeah, not exactly your typical origin story for New Age religion. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to unpack all of that and more as we dive deeper into the bizarre world of Heaven's Gate.
If you're finding this as fascinating as we are, remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps others discover these deep dives, and we appreciate the support.
Definitely. Now let's start at the beginning. How did this whole cosmic scheme begin?
Well, like many cults, it all started with two charismatic leaders, Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles. And if those names aren't strange enough, get ready for this. They went by Do and Ty, like the musical notes.
Do and Ty leading a group called Heaven's Gate. It sounds like a rejected plot from a sci-fi B-movie, but their story is anything but fictional. What were these two like? What brought them together?
They were an unlikely pair with backgrounds as different as their adopted names. Applewhite was a music professor with a troubled past, struggling with his homosexuality and yearning for a sense of purity and transcendence. Nettles, on the other hand, was a nurse with a deep interest in the occult and prophecies.
So we've got a repressed music professor and a prophecy-loving nurse. How did they go from leading relatively normal lives to, well, leading a cult?
Their meeting was a pivotal point in 1972. Applewhite had just been dismissed from his position at the University of St. Thomas in Houston, Texas, due to an inappropriate relationship with a male student. It was a time of deep personal crisis for him, and he was hospitalized for a mental breakdown. Nettles, who was already exploring various spiritual and mystical traditions, came across Applewhite as a patient and believed their meeting was preordained. They quickly developed a deep connection, convinced they were chosen to deliver a message to humanity.
These two met and quickly formed a bond, believing themselves to be the two witnesses mentioned in the book of Revelation. Okay, hold on. For those of us who haven't brushed up on our biblical prophecies lately, what exactly are the two witnesses?
Good point. The two witnesses are figures prophesied in the book of Revelation who will appear during the end times to preach and perform miracles. They are ultimately killed, but then resurrected and ascend to heaven.
Okay.
Applewhite and Nettles saw themselves as fulfilling this prophecy, but with a distinctly extraterrestrial twist.
Right, they call themselves the two, and their early teachings focused on physical transformation into extraterrestrial beings, promising their followers a ride on a UFO to a heaven in outer space.
Talk about a cosmic Uber.
Okay, let's unpack this next level concept. What did Heaven's Gate actually believe?
At its core, Heaven's Gate believed that their true home wasn't here on Earth. They saw themselves as extraterrestrial beings, temporarily inhabiting human bodies, or vehicles, as they called them. Their mission was to prepare themselves for a cosmic graduation, a departure from this earthly realm to a higher plane of existence.
It sounds like something straight out of Star Trek.
It does, doesn't it?
Which, coincidentally, Applewhite and Nettles were huge fans of.
Oh, huge fans.
They even incorporated elements of the show into their teachings.
Absolutely.
So, they believed death wasn't the end, but a transition to something greater.
Precisely. They referred to it as exiting or graduating, a joyous escape from the cycle of reincarnation they believed bound humanity to this planet. They yearned to transcend their physical limitations and reach a level of existence beyond our comprehension. And this ties into the concept of millenarianism, the belief in a coming transformation of the world, often involving a cataclysmic event followed by a new era of peace and spiritual enlightenment.
Right.
This idea has been around for centuries and manifests in different ways across various cultures and religions.
Okay.
For Heaven's Gate, the Hale-Bopp comet was their apocalyptic sign signaling the imminent arrival of their salvation.
Okay, so they believed the world was ending, and the only way to escape was to ditch your body and join them on the next level. Sounds like a tough sell. How did they convince people to buy into this?
It wasn't always a tough sell. You have to remember, this was the 1970s, a time of social upheaval, spiritual exploration, and a growing fascination with UFOs and the possibility of extraterrestrial life.
And let's not forget the role of Applewhite himself. He wasn't just a leader, he was a master storyteller, weaving together elements of biblical prophecy, science fiction, and pop culture to create a narrative that felt both compelling and terrifying.
He understood the power of imagery and symbolism, drawing on familiar tropes and archetypes to make his message resonate with his followers. He convinced them that movies like Close Encounters of the Third Kind were actually messages meant for them, proof that extraterrestrial life was real and that they were chosen to join it.
He created his own reality, his own version of truth, and they bought into it completely. Where do we go from here?
This brings us to a crucial point: the lack of traditional religious symbols in Heaven's Gate. They didn't have crosses or images of saints in their homes. Instead, they embraced technology, using their coding skills to build websites and spread their message.
It's a stark contrast to traditional religious movements that often rely on ancient texts and rituals. Heaven's Gate was modern, tech-savvy, and surprisingly adaptable.
Their message resonated with people who felt alienated from mainstream society, those searching for meaning and purpose beyond the mundane.
So they tapped into that longing for something bigger, something beyond the everyday grind. How did they spread their message and start gathering followers?
They adopted a nomadic lifestyle, traveling the country in a used RV, holding meetings in motels, campgrounds, and even national parks. Their message was often cryptic and apocalyptic, appealing to a sense of agency and exclusivity. Imagine flyers with titles like UFOs, why they are here, who they have come for, when will they leave, or last chance to advance beyond human.
Wow, that's some serious marketing. Did they just roll up to a campground, hand out flyers, and poof, instant cult members?
It wasn't quite that simple, but their message and their unconventional approach did attract attention. They appealed to people from all walks of life, even those with successful careers and seemingly stable lives, but their strict rules and intense demands led to a high attrition rate. At its peak, their following reached around 200 members, but it dwindled significantly over the years, eventually reaching just 39 by the time of the mass suicide.
So not everyone was cut out for life on the next level. Can you tell us more about those strict rules? What was life actually like inside Heaven's Gate?
Well, imagine living in a communal setting with a strict hierarchy, Applewhite and Nettles at the top,
Yeah.
followed by senior members, and then the newer recruits.
Okay.
Adhering to the dietary restrictions, abstaining from all forms of sexual expression, and wearing identical clothing. Baggy clothes, short cropped hair.
Yeah.
It created a power dynamic that made it incredibly difficult to question or challenge their teachings.
I mean, it's like a pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
But instead of selling products, they're selling salvation.
Exactly. Applewhite's personal struggles with sexuality and his desire for purification heavily shaped the cult's doctrines. Celibacy was seen as a crucial step towards achieving that purity, shedding their human limitations, and becoming more like the extraterrestrial beings they believed they were destined to become. They even went so far as to encourage castration for some male members, including Applewhite himself.
Wow. That's taking celibacy to a whole new level. So they lived communally, ate specific diets dressed alike, and remained celibate, all in preparation for this next level. If you're finding these details fascinating, make sure to give us a like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives like this. But how did they support this lifestyle? Were they all independently wealthy?
Surprisingly, no. They actually embraced technology, which might seem ironic considering their desire to leave the material world behind. They ran a successful web design business called Higher Source to support themselves and fund their activity.
Wait, a web design business? That's unexpected.
It is. They were quite tech-savvy, which allowed them to remain financially independent, live a relatively secluded lifestyle, and even advertise their beliefs through videos, a satellite TV program, and ads in publications like USA Today.
I mean, what were they thinking? Design websites by day, prepare for alien ascension by night.
Exactly. Imagine hiring a group of devout believers who are convinced the world is ending to build your website.
That's just wild. I guess even cults need to pay the bills, huh? But it also says something about them, They weren't completely detached from reality. They were using technology, they were interacting with the outside world, and they were making money.
It's like they were living in these two worlds simultaneously, the everyday world and their own unique cosmic reality.
What a fascinating contradiction. So we've got comets, spaceships, matching stickers, web design. What did their website even look like? Was it like all spaceships and flashing lights and stuff? Because I have to admit, that's what I'm picturing.
Well, surprisingly, it was pretty professional for the time. This was the early days of the internet, and they were actually pioneers in web design. But it definitely had its own unique style, lots of bold text, vibrant colors, and these weird graphic elements they called keys to Heaven's Gate, which were supposed to represent the path to their next level of existence.
Keys to Heaven's Gate.
Yeah.
That's kind of creepy. But I guess it makes sense. They saw technology as a tool, a way to reach more people with their message.
Absolutely. They were using the internet to recruit, to answer questions, to engage with the world. It's a far cry from that image of cults being isolated and secretive. Heaven's Gate, they were actually pretty out there, digitally speaking. And I guess it also shows that even a group that was preparing to leave this world behind still wanted to have a voice, to share their message, to connect with others, even if it was in this strange digital way.
Yeah, it's a weird paradox. They were rejecting the physical world, yet they were embracing this new digital realm. Makes you think about how we'll all be remembered. What traces will we leave behind?
Heavy stuff.
So they were prepping for a cosmic pickup. Did they have a specific date or event they were waiting for?
Not initially, but a pivotal event occurred in 1985 that shifted their beliefs and set them on a path towards their tragic end. Bonnie Nettles T. died from cancer.
That must have been a huge blow to the group, and especially to Applewhite. How did they cope with the loss of one of their leaders, the woman who was supposed to guide them to the next level?
It was a turning point. Applewhite reinterpreted her death, claiming that she had ascended to the next level, shedding her physical body to become a pure extraterrestrial being. This event solidified his control over the group and led to a more radical interpretation of their beliefs.
So T's death, instead of causing doubt, actually strengthened their beliefs and pushed them further down the rabbit hole. What happened next? How did this reinterpretation of T's death lead to the mass suicide?
Well, it wasn't an immediate shift. Applewhite continued to lead the group, refining their beliefs and searching for signs of their impending departure. And then in 1995, an event occurred that convinced Applewhite their time had come.
And that's where the Hale-Bopp comet comes in. They saw it as their graduation from this earthly existence, their chance to shed their human containers and join the extraterrestrial realm.
It's almost poetic, but in a really disturbing way.
It's definitely a twisted kind of poetry, because in reality, this graduation was a carefully planned mass suicide.
Yeah, that part's definitely not poetic. It's just tragic.
And methodical. They ingested phenobarbital mixed with vodka, all meticulously documented in those chilling farewell videos they left behind.
It's heartbreaking to hear him speak with such conviction, knowing what was coming.
It really is, and that's what makes these tapes so disturbing. These were real people with real lives, hopes, and dreams.
And they were willing to throw it all away for a belief system that seems completely irrational to most of us. If you are enjoying this deep dive into Heaven's Gate, we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. And don't forget to turn on those notifications so you don't miss a single episode.
It's fascinating how a celestial event could have such a profound impact on their beliefs.
Well, comets have always held a certain mystique, haven't they? They've been seen as omens, harbingers of change, both good and bad. In the case of Heaven's Gate, they believed a spaceship was trailing the comet, and it was their ticket to the next level.
It sounds like something straight out of a Hollywood blockbuster. But this was their reality.
Yeah, it's a bizarre intersection of science and pseudoscience, wouldn't you say?
Right.
Who wouldn't want to trade in their boring 9 to 5 for a one-way ticket to an alien spaceship?
I'm kind of starting to get it.
When you put it that way, it does sound appealing.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit. But how did a comet convince them to commit mass suicide? And how do they plan and execute such a horrific act? We'll delve into the chilling details of their final days in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned. If you're finding value in this deep dive, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more thought-provoking content. That way you won't miss any future episodes.
So to recap, we've got a former music teacher and a nurse who believed they were biblical prophets destined to lead their followers to salvation via a spaceship. Their belief system evolves after one of them dies.
Okay, so they see this comet and decide it's time to shed their physical vehicles. What happens next?
Well, the details of their final days are both fascinating and incredibly disturbing. They meticulously planned their deaths right down to their last meal. They all ate the same thing, a turkey pot pie from Marie Callender's.
It's such an ordinary meal for such an extraordinary and ultimately tragic event.
Right.
What else?
They even recorded farewell videos. If you haven't seen them, I highly recommend you watch them.
Yeah.
With the disclaimer, of course. They're readily available online.
I've seen a few. They're incredibly eerie. The members speak so calmly, almost cheerfully about their impending departure. They seem genuinely convinced that death is merely a transition to a higher plane of existence.
Exactly. And that's what makes their story so compelling and so unsettling. These weren't people living in squalor, deprived of education or critical thinking skills. Many were highly intelligent and came from relatively privileged backgrounds. They were artists, musicians, tech-savvy individuals who chose to end their lives based on a belief system that to most of us seems utterly absurd.
This deep dive is taking us into some pretty dark territory.
It is.
And if you're finding this as thought-provoking as I am, make sure you've hit that subscribe button and turned on notifications so you don't miss the final part of our exploration of Heaven's Gate. Let's talk about those Nike decades. I remember those images vividly from the news coverage. Rows of bodies, all dressed in identical black tracksuits, and those brand new Nikes.
It's an image that's seared into the collective memory, isn't it? It's such a strange juxtaposition, the ordinariness of those shoes against the backdrop of such a horrific event.
So those Nike decades weren't just a fashion statement.
No, they were a symbol of their uniformity.
Yeah.
Their submission to Applewhite's will.
Yeah, it's as if they wanted to make a statement, a final act of uniformity, before embarking on their journey to the next level.
Or maybe they thought they needed specific footwear for their intergalactic voyage, like no sandals allowed on the spaceship.
Whatever the reason, it just adds to the strangeness, the almost ritualistic nature of their final act. So let's talk about the actual act of suicide. It was a carefully choreographed, almost ritualistic event, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
How did they prepare for this so-called graduation?
Their preparations were meticulous and disturbingly organized. They recorded farewell messages, meticulously documented their beliefs and activities, and even purchased alien abduction insurance policies from Lloyd's of London.
I mean, can you imagine?
A cool $1 million per person in case of, and I quote, abduction, impregnation, or death caused by aliens.
And they actually paid for this.
They did. It wasn't cheap either, but it underscores the depth of their belief in their cosmic destiny. They were utterly convinced that they were about to embark on an extraordinary journey, leaving their contaminated human forms behind to join a higher realm of existence.
Okay, so we've got farewell videos, detailed documentation, and alien abduction insurance. What about the actual act? How did 39 people, seemingly rational in other aspects of their lives, convince themselves to take their own lives?
They ingested a lethal cocktail of phenobarbital mixed with applesauce and washed it down with vodka. Then they lay down on their beds, plastic bags placed over their heads, waiting for their final breath.
It's almost impossible to imagine the level of commitment and conviction required to carry out such a plan. They assisted each other in taking their lives, believing they were doing the right thing. And it's not like they rushed into this. They planned everything meticulously, practicing their transition for years, right down to the last detail.
And to add another layer of strangeness to the whole affair, each member had a $5 bill and 3/4 tucked in their pocket.
What was the significance of the money?
We can only speculate, but some believe it was meant to cover their expenses on their journey to the next level.
It's just another detail that adds to the eerie and inexplicable nature of this case. Do we know the order in which they took their lives? Was it a chaotic scene, or was it more organized?
The evidence suggests it was highly organized, with groups of members taking their lives over several days. They even had a designated exit team who stayed behind to clean up and ensure everyone followed through with the plan.
Wow, an exit team. It sounds like something out of a military operation, not a religious group preparing for their supposed ascension.
It's further evidence of the level of control Applewhite exerted over his followers. He orchestrated their deaths with the same meticulous attention to detail he applied to everything else.
And then, on March 26, 1997, the bodies were discovered, 39 people dead in a California mansion, a scene that shocked the world and forever etched the name Heaven's Gate into the annals of cult history.
The media frenzy was intense. Rancho Santa Fe became this morbid tourist attraction.
Yeah.
Everyone wanted to understand how something like this could happen, how seemingly intelligent, even successful people could be drawn into such an extreme belief system and follow it to such a tragic end. If we want to really understand what happened, we need to consider the context of their time.
That's a good point. The 90s were a unique period.
Oh, yeah.
A time of technological upheaval and millennial anxiety.
Remember the whole Y2K scare?
Oh, yeah.
The fear that computers would malfunction and cause global chaos, that sense of impending doom was palpable.
And let's not forget the rise of the internet. I mean, it was a wild west of information out there. Conspiracy theories, fringe beliefs could spread like wildfire.
Totally, and Heaven's Gate, they kind of tapped into those anxieties, offering an escape route from a world they believed was, on the brink of collapse.
So in a way, their apocalyptic beliefs weren't entirely out of sync with, the cultural zeitgeist.
Precisely, they were just a more extreme manifestation of anxieties that were already bubbling beneath the surface.
So anyone questioning Applewhite's interpretation of the comet or the necessity of suicide would have been ostracized, maybe even seen as spiritually weak or contaminated.
Exactly.
And we see this in other cults too.
Oh, yeah.
The leader becomes like a surrogate parent, a godlike figure.
Who dictates reality?
And if you question that reality, you're out.
You're a threat.
You're labeled a threat.
It's classic groupthink, where the pressure to conform is so strong it overrides individual judgment.
And the consequences can be devastating.
As we saw.
Their story is a warning.
A cautionary tale.
About the dangers of surrendering our minds to any ideology, no matter how tempting it might seem.
It's scary to think how easily people can be drawn into these kinds of extreme belief systems.
Yeah, you think you're immune to it, that it could never happen to you, but then you hear a story like Heaven's Gate, and you realize, wow, anyone can be vulnerable. Conformity, social pressure, fear of exclusion, these factors can amplify even the most outlandish beliefs.
Right.
And lead to irrational, even destructive behavior, especially when our critical thinking is compromised. It's also a reminder to question information, even when it comes from sources we trust. Speaking of trust and information, if you're finding value in this deep dive, please consider supporting our work by liking, subscribing, and turning on notifications. Now back to the story. The website you mentioned, is it still active? Can people still access their messages, their videos, all that documentation they created?
Amazingly, yes. The Heaven's Gate website is still online, maintained by former members who chose not to participate in the final graduation. It's a digital time capsule offering a glimpse into their beliefs, their rituals, and their tragic end.
A digital ghost of a belief system that led to unimaginable tragedy. What do you think draws people to the website today? Is it morbid curiosity, a desire to understand the psychology of cults, or something else entirely?
That's a question we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll examine the legacy of Heaven's Gate, the enduring fascination with their story, and the lessons we can learn from their tragic end. Stay with us.
If you're enjoying this deep dive into the paradoxes of Heaven's Gate, make sure to hit that like button and leave us a comment. We love hearing your thoughts. We've been exploring this strange and tragic story of Heaven's Gate, a journey that's taken us from cryptic names and apocalyptic prophecies to alien abduction insurance, and a website that lives on as a digital ghost of a bygone belief system. It's a story that raises a lot of questions, and one that continues to fascinate and maybe even disturb us decades later.
It's a story that's hard to shake off, isn't it? It's a reminder of the power of belief, the allure of charismatic leaders, and the dangers of groupthink.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder, why are we still so drawn to this story? What is it about Heaven's Gate that continues to capture our attention even after all these years?
I think it's a combination of factors. There's the inherent mystery and tragedy of the event itself, the mass suicide of 39 people who believed they were leaving their earthly vehicles behind to join a higher realm of existence. That's a powerful and unsettling image that sticks with you.
It's like something out of a science fiction novel, yet it happened in our world in our lifetime. And the fact that it involved technology, the internet, adds another layer of intrigue.
Right. It's almost a paradox, a group that believed in transcending the material world, yet they embraced the digital world to spread their message and even earn a living. It challenges our assumptions about the relationship between technology and spirituality.
And then there's the website still active today, a chilling reminder of their beliefs, their rituals, and their tragic end. You mentioned that it's maintained by former members who didn't participate in the final graduation. What do they hope to achieve by keeping the site up? Is it a form of a memorial, a warning, or something else entirely?
It's hard to say for sure what their motivations are, but I think it's likely a combination of factors. There might be a sense of responsibility, a desire to preserve the memory of those who died, however misguided their beliefs may have been. There could also be a desire to share their story, to warn others about the dangers of cults and the importance of critical thinking.
It's a reminder that even the most outlandish beliefs can seem plausible to some, especially when presented by charismatic leaders and reinforced within a closed community. It's a story that reminds us to question information, to think critically, and to be wary of those who claim to have all the answers.
Exactly. It's a cautionary tale that's relevant now more than ever in a world where information and misinformation spreads like wildfire through the internet. We need to be discerning consumers of information to evaluate evidence and to be willing to challenge our own assumptions.
So if there's one thing to take away from our deep dive into Heaven's Gate, it's this. Be curious, be skeptical, and most importantly, be kind. We are all searching for meaning in this complex world, and it's in our shared humanity that we can find the strength to resist the allure of extremism and build a future where critical thinking and compassion prevail.
And that concludes our exploration of Heaven's Gate. We hope this deep dive has been insightful and thought-provoking.
So for those of you who braved this journey into the strange and tragic world of Heaven's Gate, we applaud you. It was a wild ride, and we appreciate you sticking with us.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And remember, keep your minds open, but don't forget to bring your critical thinking skills along for the ride.
It's up to us to choose our path wisely.
Absolutely. And it's a choice we have to make every day and every interaction, every decision. Do we blindly follow or do we question? Do we accept what we're told or do we seek our own truth?
Yeah, sometimes a little bit of healthy questioning is exactly what we need. Don't just take things at face value. Dig deeper, challenge assumptions, and always maintain your own sense of individuality.
Don't be afraid to ask questions, to challenge assumptions, and to seek multiple perspectives. The truth, as they say, is out there. But finding it requires a willingness to look beyond the surface, to dig deeper, to think critically.
Well said. And if you found value in our exploration of this complex and fascinating story, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications for more deep dives into the strange and often unsettling corners of human history. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep exploring the endless mysteries of the human experience. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.